Most people think aging only shows up in the mirror. Wrinkles, gray hair, sagging skin. You glance at yourself in the morning, notice a new line near your eyes, and assume that's just what getting older looks like. But the real clock of your body isn't ticking on your face. It's ticking inside your blood vessels, across nearly 60,000 miles of invisible tubing running through your entire body, from the largest arteries down to capillaries thinner than a strand of hair. And here's the most important thing you might hear today: that clock can be slowed down. Not with expensive supplements, not with injections or experimental treatments. With your plate and with a real understanding of what's actually happening beneath the surface. In this video, we'll first understand what makes a blood vessel young or old. Then we'll look at exactly what to eat, how much, and why it works from a biological standpoint. Stay until the end. The last food on this list is one almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most powerful of them all. Part 1. Understanding the engine picture. Your blood vessels not as rigid passive pipes like copper plumbing, but as living, muscular tubes capable of narrowing or widening in a fraction of a second based on what your body needs. This distinction matters enormously because it completely changes how we should think about cardiovascular health. When you climb a flight of stairs, the vessels in your legs open up to feed your muscles more oxygen. When you eat a meal, your vessels redirect blood toward your digestive system to absorb nutrients efficiently. And when you're thinking hard, working through a complex problem or focusing intensely on a task, the vessels in your brain redirect blood flow toward the active regions, exactly where neuronal activity demands it most. It's a constant, invisible choreography, and it's absolutely essential to how you function every single day. This adaptability depends on a thin layer of cells lining the inside of every vessel, the endothelium. Think of it as an extremely thin protective film, almost like plastic wrap, coating the inner surface of your entire circulatory system from beginning to end. Each cell in that lining is a tiny chemical factory, and among the substances it produces, one plays a central role: nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a messenger molecule. When the endothelium releases it, it sends a clear signal to the muscle layer wrapped around the vessel: relax, widen up. The vessel opens, resistance to blood flow drops, blood pressure falls, and the heart no longer has to pump as hard to keep blood moving. It's a remarkably elegant system, constantly recalibrating itself minute by minute. The problem is that, as the years go by, this nitric oxide factory gradually slows down. Several factors drive this decline: oxidative stress accumulated over decades, low-grade chronic inflammation that builds up silently, a diet high in refined sugar and processed fats, a sedentary lifestyle, smoking, and simply the normal biological wear of time. When nitric oxide production drops, the endothelium becomes more vulnerable. Deposits start accumulating along the inner vessel wall. Immune cells move in, trying to clean up what they perceive as damage. But when this cleanup process becomes chronic, it fuels the very inflammation it was meant to resolve. It's a vicious cycle: less nitric oxide, more inflammation, more stiffness, and then even less nitric oxide. And this is often where, invisibly, far from any mirror, the first signs begin that we mistakenly chalk up to simply getting older: chronic afternoon fatigue, heavy legs by evening, small memory lapses, trouble concentrating for more than 20 minutes at a time, getting winded by effort that used to be effortless. These aren't inevitable facts of your age. They're largely signals sent by a vascular system that needs attention. The good news, and this is really the whole point of this video, is that this biological factory can restart. It's never fully shut down, even after decades of neglect. And certain foods, thanks to compounds called polyphenols and other bioactive molecules, act as genuine switches capable of reigniting nitric oxide production and calming vascular inflammation. Part 2: 6 foods that restart the engine. 1. Pomegranate blueberries usually get the spotlight when people talk about fruit for circulation, and they deserve it. But pomegranate remains massively underrated, even though it deserves just as much attention, arguably more. Pomegranate is loaded with punicolagens, powerful polyphenols that are fairly rare in the plant kingdom. Their mechanism is particularly interesting. Rather than simply boosting nitric oxide production, they protect the nitric oxide that's already been produced from breaking down too quickly in the bloodstream. In other words, they act like a shield that extends how long this valuable molecule stays active, letting its benefits last longer. Clinical studies have shown that a glass of pure pomegranate juice with no added sugar, consumed daily, can improve arterial elasticity within just a few weeks. Some research even suggests a protective effect against thickening of the carotid artery wall, an early marker of cardiovascular risk. To work this into your routine, aim for about 200 to 250 milliliters of pure pomegranate juice per day, or the equivalent in fresh arils added to a salad or plain yogurt. Watch out for store-bought juices, though many are diluted with other sweetened juices, so check the label carefully and choose 100% pure pomegranate. 2. Garlic. Simple, cheap, found in nearly every kitchen on the planet, and yet remarkably powerful for vascular health. Garlic deserves far more credit than it usually gets. The mechanism is fascinating. When you crush or chop a clove of garlic, an enzyme called alliinase comes into contact with a compound called allicin, and this chemical reaction produces allicin, the compound responsible for garlic's sharp smell once it's cut. Once inside the body, allicin converts into hydrogen sulfide, a gas that, much like nitric oxide, acts as a messenger capable of relaxing blood vessel walls and improving circulation. One important technical detail: to maximize allicin production, it's best to crush or chop the garlic and then let it sit exposed to air for about 10 minutes before cooking it. This pause allows the enzymatic reaction to fully take place before the heat from cooking deactivates the enzyme responsible. 1 to 2 fresh cloves per day are generally enough to produce a measurable effect on blood pressure in clinical studies. You can add them raw, lightly crushed, to a dressing, or stir them in at the very end of cooking to preserve as much of their benefit as possible. 3. Wild salmon. Here we shift gears completely. We leave the world of plant polyphenols and enter the world of fatty acids, specifically the long-chain omega-3s, EPA and DHA, found in particularly high concentrations in fatty wild fish like salmon. These fatty acids work differently from the compounds above. Rather than directly stimulating nitric oxide production, they reduce inflammation in the vessel wall and change the composition of endothelial cell membranes, making them more flexible, more fluid, and therefore more responsive to dilation signals. They also affect blood triglycerides, often elevated in people who eat a lot of processed food, and help stabilize heart rhythm. It's worth favoring wild salmon over farmed salmon when possible, since its omega-3 content tends to be higher and its fatty acid profile more favorable. 2 servings of about 150 grams each, spread across the week, roughly match the dose linked to cardiovascular benefits in large population studies, including the well-known Scandinavian cohorts followed over several decades. For those who don't eat fish, ground flaxseed and walnuts are plant-based sources of omega-3s, though in a slightly different form that the body has to convert, and that conversion is far less efficient. 4. Spinach-like beets, which are well known for their nitrate content. Spinach is also an excellent source of naturally occurring dietary nitrates. Once eaten, these nitrates are converted to nitrites by bacteria on the tongue, then transformed into nitric oxide in the stomach and bloodstream, the exact same mechanism described for other root vegetables. But spinach brings an added bonus. It's also rich in potassium and magnesium, 2 minerals that play a direct role in regulating blood pressure. Potassium helps the kidneys flush out excess sodium, while magnesium helps relax the smooth muscle surrounding blood vessels. This combination of nitrates and minerals creates a particularly interesting synergistic effect for vascular health. A serving of roughly 75 to 100 grams of spinach per day is a reasonable, easy-to-hit target. You can eat it raw in a salad to preserve as many nitrates as possible, since prolonged cooking can partially degrade them, or lightly steamed for just a few minutes, which offers a decent balance between digestibility and nutrient preservation. 5. Green tea. The star compound in green tea is called epigallocatechin gallate, better known by its acronym EGCG. It's a catechin, a family of polyphenols especially concentrated in young, unfermented tea leaves, which is what sets green tea apart from black tea, whose leaves go through an oxidation process that transforms much of that catechin content. EGCG works on the vascular system on multiple levels. On one hand, it directly stimulates the enzyme responsible for nitric oxide production in the endothelium, similar to the mechanism seen with anthocyanins in red fruits. On the other hand, it has remarkable antioxidant power, capable of neutralizing free radicals responsible for the oxidative stress that gradually damages endothelial cells over time. Vascular imaging studies have shown that regular green tea consumption is linked to better arterial elasticity and reduced long-term cardiovascular risk, notably in several large cohorts observed in Japan, where green tea consumption is deeply woven into daily eating habits. 2 to 3 cups a day is the dose most commonly cited in clinical studies for producing a measurable effect. One technical detail worth mentioning: it's best to steep the leaves for just a few minutes, around 2 to 3, in water that isn't fully boiling, closer to 170 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Oversteeping or water that's too hot can degrade some of the catechins and also make the tea more bitter. 6. Turmeric. And here's the food almost nobody automatically connects to vascular health, even though the research on it has been piling up for about 20 years. Turmeric contains a yellow-orange pigment called curcumin, responsible for its distinctive color and for many of its biological properties. Curcumin has a particularly strong anti-inflammatory action, capable of acting directly on the molecular pathways responsible for chronic inflammation in vessel walls, notably by inhibiting certain transcription factors involved in the inflammatory response. But curcumin also has a more specific effect on endothelial function itself. Several clinical trials have shown it can improve flow-mediated dilation, that same test mentioned earlier that measures how well vessels widen in response to increased blood flow, a direct marker of endothelial health. The main challenge with curcumin is its very low bioavailability. Taken on its own, a large portion of it gets eliminated by the body before it's even absorbed effectively. This is where one crucial, almost always overlooked detail comes in: pairing turmeric with a source of black pepper. Piperine, the compound responsible for black pepper's sharp bite, can dramatically boost curcumin absorption by slowing its breakdown in the liver and gut. A pinch of ground black pepper added to your turmeric can genuinely make a difference. Half a teaspoon of turmeric powder a day, paired with a pinch of black pepper, and ideally a source of fat like olive oil, since curcumin is fat-soluble, is a reasonable starting dose to begin noticing benefits over several weeks. Part 3. What actually makes the difference? None of these foods is a magic bullet on its own, and it would be misleading to present them that way. Their real power comes from consistency and combination. A vascular system doesn't repair itself in a single meal, no matter how rich in polyphenols it is. It rebuilds itself week after week, month after month. Much like a muscle, you train gradually and can't shape in a single workout. That's also why variety matters just as much as quantity. Each of the foods covered here acts on slightly different biological pathways. Some directly stimulate nitric oxide production, others protect that molecule once it's made, others reduce inflammation upstream, and still others feed the gut microbiome, which is increasingly recognized as a major player in cardiovascular health. By varying your sources, you maximize your chances of hitting all of these mechanisms at once. Another point worth emphasizing clearly: these foods are never a substitute for proper medical care. They complement, but never replace, treatment prescribed by your doctor if you already have diagnosed high blood pressure, diabetes, or any other cardiovascular condition. If you're on medication, particularly blood thinners or blood pressure drugs, it's always wise to talk to your doctor before making significant dietary changes, especially around foods like garlic or turmeric, which can in some cases interact with certain treatments. Finally, let's not forget that diet is only one piece of the puzzle, even though it's an essential and often overlooked piece. Quality sleep, regular physical activity even at a moderate level, managing chronic stress, and quitting smoking remain equally important pillars for keeping your blood vessels supple over the decades. Conclusion: the next time you catch yourself looking in the mirror and thinking about the passage of time, remember that the real story of your age is being written elsewhere, across thousands of miles of invisible vessels working tirelessly, day and night, to nourish every cell in your body. And that story, contrary to the fatalism we often accept about aging, is largely in your hands, or more precisely, on your plate, and in the small habits you choose to repeat every day. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll be covering the foods and habits you absolutely want to avoid if you want to keep your blood vessels young for as long as possible.